Forward Progress here on the Forward Progress YouTube channel. It is our weekly recap show and our look ahead to next week. Clive Bixby off last week. He's back in the fold for this week. So it's myself, Rob Pizzola, celebrating a Dallas Cowboys win. Clive Bixby, how's it going?
You had to bring out the Cowboys right away. Like there's happiness on one side of the screen, and then there's a Bears fan on the other. Like, it's really ugly, but we'll get to it.
Yes, we will. I see the comments are going pretty early today. Again, I see Research Flat Earth is back. So we'll get to comments over the course of the show. If you do want to comment, you have to be subscribed here to the Forward Progress channel. So make sure that you do so. For those of you who are new here, you haven't seen it before, we're going to sort of recap the day as we look ahead to next week's games. So over the course of the show, we're going to pull up the odds from Pinnacle Sportsbook. Pinnacle's been in business for 25 years. Everyday competitive odds, very good limits on openers here. I believe $3,000 limits on sides last week when we were doing the show. So as always, bet smart, bet Pinnacle. If you're in Ontario, sign up using code HAMMER, as it does help support the show. You must be 19 plus. And of course, please play responsibly. But we're going to get to all of next week's stuff really quickly. Anthony asks, Clive, anything on the night game? Personally, I just have the Chiefs -2.5 to close a teaser. Money is coming in on the Jets towards game time here. I get it, like, somewhat from like a pure numbers play, but I can't go anywhere near the Jets.
Same. It's a numbers thing where in a pickup league that I'm in, I did take the Jets just because I can, but I can't put any real money on it. I just can't do it.
Yep. It reminds me of there's been like a couple times over the past decade where there's like a really bad team that the sharps or like the market movers get infatuated with. At one point, it was the Cleveland Browns. There was a year where like Deshaun Kaiser was the quarterback and they would just get steamed every game and they just kept getting blown out. One year, it was also the Jags as well, where it was just like, they're terrible. Every week they get bet for some reason. And I kind of feel like the Jets are in that boat now where Zach Wilson is just terrible. Like, you got to show me something. Like, you got to show me that you're capable of moving the ball through the air at some point before I'm going to bet you against the best quarterback in the world.
It's completely fair. I mean, this is a Chiefs or nothing. Like, if I'm going to put money out there, what did this total open at? Because I'm not surprised that it's where it's at now. I would have guessed it bet was higher, probably, right?
Yeah, I think the opener last week during the show was like 43.5 or something like that. That me and Austin were talking about, and it predictably got bet down. And even now, I think a little bit before game time here, you're seeing the market making books, Pinnacle and some others shaded heavily towards the under on 42 as well. So it's been pretty much one way.
Yeah. It's a game you can bet on.
It's a game you can bet on, as are a number of them that are on the board next week. So Pinnacle is slowly opening these up right now, and we're going to get to them one by one. We tend to go rotation number order, top to bottom. That means we're not always starting with the most beautiful games, but we will cover all of them and give our thoughts on all of them. And we're going to start with Thursday Night Football. If you recall, Clive, we had this game last year in primetime. It was arguably one of the worst primetime games ever. Eyes were bleeding. Justin Fields was taking sacks all over the place. It was a disaster.
And I bet the Commanders. I bet the Commies.
You bet the Commies. Okay, so you remember the game at least.
I do. I eked out a win.
Yes. Bears at Commies this week. Few things of note going into it. Washington, completely healthy today against the Philadelphia Eagles. There was nobody on the injury report. They were healthy. They got through the game healthy. Chicago, on the other hand, had nobody in their secondary. Kyler Gordon is on IR. He can't come back till week 6. Eddie Jackson, their star safety's out. Jalen Johnson was out with a hamstring injury. Josh Blackwell was put on IR with a hamstring injury. Very depleted secondary. On the offensive line, I believe that Tevin Jenkins went on IR before the season started, so he's eligible to return for this Thursday's game if he's healthy against Washington. But it is a pretty banged up secondary. So the Pinnacle opening number here for this game is basically like a 6, between a 6.5 in favor of Washington, and the total being 44.5. I have an initial reaction to this, but I'm curious if anything stands out to you immediately in terms of some way you might see the market move in this game.
So I could see the total. Like
Oh,
I
yep.
is that where you're going with it,
That's
or
a
did you?
so like so I'm sure someone will point out a look ahead number and they'll be like, "Oh, the look ahead number total was lower last week." The market is sometimes slow to catch up to things, and I think we've been very slow to catch up to how bad the Bears defense is. Like historically bad defense. And I know we're above 44 now at 44.5, but I see this going up. Like it's got to go up.
Well, what did it go up? 2.5 points. Oh, I'm
Yep.
thinking of the Bears. I don't have a line history in front of me. Bears Broncos, wasn't that 44.5 or so that opened, and it closed around 46.5, 47, depending on what book?
Yeah, me and Austin were talking about that last week as well. I'm pretty sure it was 44.5 when we were talking about it, and it closed 47 universally across the board. Now, it's a little bit different, I should say, because Denver doesn't have a defense and Washington does. So I don't think it's apples to apples. I don't think we're going to close 47 here. But my immediate reaction to this is we should not see Bears totals in like the lower to mid 40s right now with the state of their defense.
No. I don't really look at this game. I mean, I don't think the Commanders' offense is much worse than Denver. If they are worse, like I kind of have them on the same ish level. And Denver could have played better offensively today, and they didn't. Yeah, I think this only moves up, even with the short week.
Yeah, it's one of the scary thing would be that Chicago obviously loses in devastating fashion today, blowing a 28-7 lead. Broncos come back, win 31-28, and it's like it does feel like they've now hit rock bottom. Like every week, it feels like they're getting like worse and worse to the point where they're just hitting like a new low, and you say to yourself like it can't possibly get this worse. And I wonder if there's a game at some point where they just offensively, like the Chase Claypool didn't even go to the game today. He literally sat at home, did not go to the game.
Exactly what I was gonna say. Like, it's not just on the field; it's off the field shit too. Like Claypool this week, defensive coordinator last week, or in between the 2 weeks. It's a mess. Like, this is like the most toxic organization. Like, anybody who doesn't have this team as 32 in their power rankings is out of their mind.
Yeah. Yeah,
It's
I'm with you.
it's so disheartening.
I'm with you. It took a while to catch up. Credit to I can't remember who was in the chat last week, but we were kind of talking about the bottom of the league. And he was like, yeah, Chicago by far last. We need to really start upgrading the Arizona side. And yeah, as we say this, Jameel, you're completely right. Immediate steam to the over as Pinnacle's now moved to 45.5. We'll see if that happens
Sorry.
across market. Well, listen, I mean, this is the purpose of the show, right? We're trying to
It
create
is.
value in some way. I'm not giving away my numbers. I don't run my numbers till Tuesday, but I can give you my
No.
reaction to what I
Right.
think um is like how this is going to move. In terms of the side, we're back in the territory now that we were week 1, where we have Washington, who in my opinion is not a very good football team, although maybe a little bit underrated. They've been done in by turnovers a lot so far this year, but now needing Washington to cover margin.
So I was trying to look through my bet stamp quickly to see if I have there's a lot of bets in there, my personal one. So it's like it's really hard to get to it. I can't find what the number was last year. I feel like it was close to a pick. Um and the line moved a little bit. I mean, if we're looking at 6 now, it feels like a big ask even still. I can't take the Bears, but at the same time, I kind of see it coming down towards the 5.5, way instead of 6 is a lot to ask.
So I think if this game was played today based off of market power rankings, which we talk about a lot, It's just like where we think that the market is rating these teams based off of the closing point spreads of the game. I think Washington would have closed between 4.5 point favorites at home to Chicago today if they played today. If I take both teams' peak rating in market this year, so where they've been highest rated through 4 weeks, I get Washington -3. If I take both teams' worst ratings in market this year, the lowest of the low, I get Washington -2.5. So there's no doubt that I think that there's like Chicago is like this cancerous team now, and nobody wants to go near them. And now you're basically getting like you're going to have to pay a premium to bet against Chicago, I think, at this point. Like the market is finally caught up to the fact that they never cover spreads. And I just don't know what that number needs to be, though, for me to take Chicago. And because of that, I don't know what's going to happen with this side, but I don't think Chicago's getting bet immediately. If anything, I think it's like late game day steam like we saw today.
Yeah, I think probably 5.5 is where the number would close. I mean, if you're putting a gun to my head, but I can't bet the Bears. Like I can't bet them at 6. It's not like I want to go out and snap bet them. Like 7 is probably a snap bet. No, 7 is a snap bet. I'll be honest. Like 7 is a snap bet, but like 6 is not. So
Agreed. Cottage says the market's upgrading Washington today, as they should. I mean, they closed as like 9.5 point underdogs, and they went to overtime against the Eagles. I think they're deserving of being upgraded. From a pure box score perspective, was a very even game. I mean, the Eagles 6.2 yards per play to Washington's 4.9, but Washington had 26 first downs, series conversion rate of 80%, EPA per play higher than the Eagles. So, I mean, it was pretty close all around. Chicago, on the other hand, you'll look at the box score and you'll be like, how did they lose? And honestly, it's the -2 turnover differential, and they just don't know how to close out a game. So I agree that definitely there needs to be an upgrade in market there. We'll go to the next game. We got the 9:30 a.m. For the second straight week. Big travel advantage here for the Jacksonville Jaguars. They're already in London. They played the Atlanta Falcons today. This morning, they beat them 23-7. The Buffalo Bills now have to head out to Jacksonville. Pretty big injury for the Bills today. Tre'Davious White, he left. It's suspected that he may have torn his Achilles today. It was a non-contact injury.
Yeah.
And they're going to do some further tests, but it looks like he's going to be out long-term. We don't know if Jordan Poyer will be back next week. He missed this week's game with a knee injury, but that could potentially be two big pieces of their secondary that are out. On the Jacksonville side of things, they have like mini cluster injury, wide receiver injuries. Zay Jones was out today. Jamal Agnew, they're number 3 and 4. And I don't know their status for next week. But right now we see the Bills laying 5.5 and the total at 48.5. First and foremost, before we even get into this, Buffalo's listed as the home team. It's a neutral site game. Jacksonville is there. They've played there every year, pretty much. Is there like a reason to maybe give Jacksonville a little bit of bump, home field advantage? I mean, this is challenging because I think it's very subjective. No one really knows the answer to this. But if we're going to make a number on this game, yeah. Like, what do we do in this situation? Do we just make it neutral, or do we give Jacksonville something for staying out there for a week?
I'd probably give them a little slight half a point to a point. Probably half a point. Like if I'm again subjective, I have to think through it. But my initial instinct is to get a little bit of a tick in their direction, but not much more than that. And Buffalo played a tough game today, so I don't want to go to the letdown factor. I hate that. I feel like that's a cop out. But at the same time, add that on to the travel. There might be something there.
So the challenge I have with this game is that it feels like a big number for a neutral site game between these two teams. Like it just has that feel to me, but I don't think very highly of Jacksonville. Like I bet Jacksonville this week. They had a +3 turnover mark. Like this game should have not even, it felt like there was a chance for Atlanta to come back at one point in this game. like, oh no, the Jags are blowing this type of situation, because it's 17-0 at halftime. Atlanta scores out of the gate in the second half. But something is wrong with Jacksonville's offense. Like, they can't run the ball right now. Maybe it's just the injuries at receiver where they don't have a third option to run routes or anything like that. But it just feels broken. And you watch the Bills now for 3 straight weeks just go up and down the field on everyone. Raiders, Commanders, Dolphins, like just a historically good run of offense for 3 consecutive games. And Jacksonville just doesn't seem that appealing to me anymore.
So I think if you were probably to ask most people at the beginning of the year, they at least had the perception that Jacksonville was probably going to be a top third of the league offense and hopefully an average defense. And they just feel very average on both sides of the ball where nothing's really clicking. Some dumb mistakes here and there. I sent off a tweet to Suma. I'm like, Jacksonville feels like they got some chargers in them. Like they could do some chargering. Like that just it's a feel. I don't like it. They don't close out games. But at the same time, I feel like 5.5 it's a tough number for the Bills to give. If this was the beginning of the season, would people be snap taking Jacksonville? I feel like they would.
Oh yes, 100%. I think very likely if this was the first game of the season, people would be pouncing on that like that. But we're now a month in, and what's really interesting to me is that I just imported the EPA and success rate numbers updated. I strip out garbage time, so I take out any any plays where one team has at least 90% chance to win, like greater than 90% chance to win, and I strip those out. And then I adjust for the schedule that they've played so far this year. So we're only four weeks through the season. But here's where I have Jacksonville's offense: 23rd in adjusted EPA, 12th in adjusted success rate. That's their offense. So that what that indicates to me is they're probably getting done in by some turnovers offensively. They're moving the ball. They're doing what they should on offense, top 12 offense, but then they're getting killed by turnovers. What's really interesting to me, though, is I have their defense adjusted EPA on defense 4th, adjusted success rate on defense 3rd. And that is really surprising to me because going into the year, and the only reason I say that is at one point in the year, I really thought Jacksonville was going to be like this over team. Like week 2, I'm like, yeah, I really want to play Jacksonville overs. I think I did. I almost feel like they're shifting the other way now. There's no really explosion in their offense. They're still trying to run the ball, even though they can't. The defense is playing fine. I know it's so painful, but like my standout for this game is I feel the total's a little bit too high. And I don't know that necessarily. I don't have a good read on totals generally, especially involving the Bills, who just keep getting bet to the over all the time. But 48.5 to me subjectively feels even a little bit high with this Bills offense.
Yeah, with Jacksonville's lack of explosion and their defense actually playing probably better than anticipated, I think the market has them profiled as an over team still, and we see numbers come down slightly every week. I think this is another week where the number does come down. It's especially the overseas travel. I certainly don't see it going the other way.
Yeah, and off of the Bills' performance on offense today, like naturally the total is just going to open a lot higher than it would have a week ago. Like, and that's kind of what I'm getting at. Like, if they had played today, forget what I saw about Buffalo against Miami's defense. By the way, Miami's defense is terrible. I talked about this on Pizza Buffet this morning. Worst in terms of efficiency in the league. We saw the Jags play one of these games against the Chiefs already too, right? Where it was just like this,
Sloggy.
Yeah, just like no, Buffalo is very content for the most part just to take what's given in front of them. They've done that a lot this season, but they were airing it out today against Miami because Miami's secondary is so bad. I really feel like this is a game where you don't get a lot of chunk plays unless we get returning receivers for Jacksonville. That might change my opinion, but ultimately, I almost feel like we're going to get late money on the under in this game.
Yeah, I mean, I think this probably comes down to 47. Like, again, I don't run any numbers or anything like that until, tomorrow or Tuesday, and then I make some adjustments for what I see in box scores, etc., and whatever I watch on NFL Plus, like when I watch condensed games back. But if you tell me this game ends 46.5, that wouldn't shock me at all.
All right.
To go through 47, like
right. Yeah, I mean that I would have trouble seeing for the Bills. I think 47 is like the low, but yeah, I
call
don't
it. I said I wouldn't be shocked. Like
know.
that
Right.
would not,
Right.
put it in
Right.
context.
Yeah. Connor says, doesn't Jacksonville have poor third down metrics too? They do. They've been actually very efficient on first and second down. I believe.
And poor fourth down metrics.
Yeah, I mean there was a couple fourth downs for them today. I'm pretty sure. I think they went 1 of 2 on fourth down today, but third down today again 5 of 14. Success rate offensively 38% against the Falcons defense. They're just struggling. They're struggling. But let's move on to 1 o'clocks next week. I bet against Houston today. That was a mistake, evidently. They shellacked the Pittsburgh Steelers. They're going out on the road to take on the Atlanta Falcons. Atlanta will be returning from London. Now, Atlanta, pretty clean injury report again today. Really no significant injuries for them this year. Houston, like what's really impressive with Houston is that they probably have, maybe you can argue Baltimore, but between Baltimore and Houston, I think some of the worst injury reports in the league. Houston's entire offensive line is like makeshift right now. It's a disaster. Yeah. Like their left guard is on IR, their center's on IR, their right tackle's on IR, their left tackle, Laramie Tunsil, was out again. Their backup left tackle was out again. Their backup center, Michael Dieter, was out today. That's like a disaster in and of itself. Then on defense, you have Derek Stingley, who they drafted in 2022, I think third overall. Tavir Thomas, another corner, Denzel Perryman. Yet they just basically bodied the Pittsburgh Steelers today. And the number we see now is Atlanta -2.5, -116. The total at 41. And this is definitely a correction. Because, again, market implied ratings, these teams played today, there's no way Atlanta is short of 3. In fact, they might even be -3.5 going into today. So there's definitely a correction here. Now it's just a matter of whether or not it's warranted. And it's hard for me to say that it's not when you consider the quarterback play for Atlanta.
Ritter's awful. Like, just awful. I there's no other word for it. And Houston has surprised the hell out of me. But I think the downgrade of Atlanta and the upgrade of Houston, I think this number's warranted.
See, like, this is just a personal thing for me, for the audience here, but I've bet against Houston 2 weeks in a row. And last week against Jacksonville, horrible bet on Jacksonville. This week against Pittsburgh, I thought that Pittsburgh's defensive line was going to dominate this Houston O-line, and it never came to fruition. And now we got, like, CJ Stroud actually looks really good. Like, really good. Now, maybe there's like been an overreaction and people are like too quick to anoint him as something, but they're definitely capable of moving the ball through the air. The Atlanta Falcons are not. I don't know what's going to happen here, but I do think that this number, anytime it bounces up to 3, Houston gets bought. Like, I don't see a scenario where this can go higher than 3.
No, if I see a 3, I'm taking it immediately. Now, if you say Heineke's starting, that gives a different perception in my mind. Then I think Heineke is worth at least a half a point to a point on this offense.
I would agree. I don't know the exact number, but certainly an upgrade. It's not even debatable that it's an upgrade. I think the challenge is also, if you bet Houston, you basically like that sphincter is going to be pretty tight if you see Desmond Ridder take off his helmet on the sideline and Taylor Heineke come into the game at any point or another. Like, that has to be considered at this point. The fact that if Ridder gets off to a bad start in any game, it could be QB change as well.
So if we heard anything like that though, like in terms of rumblings, like where, they're gonna make that kind of change, because I haven't at all. Like it feels like Ritter's the guy, whether he should be or he shouldn't, but they're gonna let him go in and develop. Like, would they
Yeah.
take that step back and go to Heineke? I don't know.
I don't know either, but like the thing is the division is up for grabs. Like New Orleans lost today. Tampa is in the lead in the division. It's like, okay, like,
Fair.
so at some point or another, it's just negligence by Arthur Smith if he doesn't make a move. Um, it's incredibly challenging. And then like on the other side of things, the total's now 41, right? The issue I like Atlanta is a dead nut under team in this type of price range, in my opinion. But Houston like throws the ball deep now. Although it's like it's the weirdest offense to me, but like Nico Collins, Tank Dell, like they air it out. And now you get like a team that I think is more has become more of an over team in Houston because their offense is capable, and this like very big time under team in Atlanta. I have no idea with this total.
I think it's about right. Maybe it goes down a little bit. I mean, today Pittsburgh closed 41, 41 and a half, depending on what book you're looking at. Um, I mean, transitive property.
Yeah.
Pittsburgh and Atlanta is pretty comparable from an offensive standpoint. I think this number's pretty fair.
Austin asks, how many games do you need to know if he's the guy? I
I
mean,
know enough to know he's not.
yeah,
But I'm not the guy making the decision.
I cannot say with certainty, but I think that there's a very, very high likelihood that he ain't the guy, and he's never going to be the guy. I would like to see them open up the offense, though. They don't do him any favors. Like it's such a flaccid offense that they're not. But I don't know. Maybe it's just what they're working with. Honestly, that they don't have the confidence level in him to
The
do
offense
anything.
feels like it's a prayer that Bijan's going to break something. That's what it feels like. Every time he gets the ball, it's just like let's cross our fingers. Maybe he could break off a huge play, and that's it.
Yep. I mean, he had some amazing plays today. He is the real deal.
He broke my ankles just watching on TV. Like
the Toy Story reenactment, or like that was hilarious. Yeah, that's something else. Okay, I mean, I don't know with this game. Like subjectively, it feels to me like the game has to hang out in this range. I'm just worried that Houston feels like a team, and maybe people in the chat might agree or not, but Houston feels like a team where the model is going to just be too slow to catch up to them.
Mm-hmm.
Right? Don't they have that vibe to you where like
yeah.
forget what you knew about the Texans going into the year? Like if you didn't know, if you had no prior knowledge, priors come into the conversation, right? You know prior knowledge that the Texans win total is one of the lowest in the league. They had these long odds to make the playoffs and win the AFC South. And you only watch what you've watched of the Texans this year, you would not consider them like a bottom 3 team.
No, I mean, I think I probably had them at like -6, -6.5 to average, somewhere in that range a few weeks ago. Now, probably when I'm done this week, it'll probably be -3.5. Like a 3-point adjustment to 2.5 to 3-point adjustment, probably since the beginning of the year.
Yeah. Research Flatter says Houston is good, not great, but good. I don't even think they're good. I think that they're probably like slightly below average or average, but where they're ranked, like where they're being power rated right now, like even this number implies that Atlanta is better than Houston, right? And going into the year, we all thought that Atlanta was like the hot ticket in the offseason for season win total over. Houston, like no one was even considering them to do anything.
No,
But
it was them and
again,
the Cardinals in this little box of who's going to fight for the worst record in the league, and you were hoping Houston was hoping it wasn't going to be them because they gave up picks.
yeah. So Brandon brings up a good point, and he's referring to Adam Chernoff. Big Churn has been all over Stroud for garbage time numbers. Tune has to change now. Yeah, I agree. And I've kind of been in the same boat, right? It was early in the year. Okay, his numbers look better. His passing yardage totals look better. Like they got blown out by Gardner Minshew 3 weeks ago. But then they beat Jacksonville, and now they've beaten Pittsburgh in lopsided fashion today. it's a little bit different. The one thing for me is, I mentioned this again on Pizza Buffet this morning as well, but CJ Stroud, when not facing pressure this year, he was third out of 35 quarterbacks in EPA per dropback with no pressure. He was 34th out of 35 when facing pressure. That's why I thought this was going to be a horrible matchup for him today, but they really schemed this offense well. Like Houston, D'Amico Ryans has taken over that program, and it just feels like a completely different team. Bob Slowick's their offensive coordinator, and they just, the Steelers never had a chance of getting home on a lot of plays today. So,
right now, from an EPA per play perspective, he's above Jordan Love, Deshaun Watson, Mac Jones, rest in peace, Joe Burrow, Ritter, Pickett, and he's just barely below Tannehill, Lawrence, Bryce Young, and Derek Carr. That's not great. I mean, meaning it's not as bad as I think we thought it was. It's surprising.
Yep. I mean, he's getting the ball out quickly for sure. They've given him good options, some quick looks. That's definitely been a factor. So Connor asks, how do you order the AFC South? Jags, Colts, Texans, Titans. So I'll tell you right now that going into today, I ordered them Jags, Titans, Colts, Texans. That was my order of them going into today. I have no clue and no level of confidence in that being correct. We could get 2 weeks from now and it's completely different. And I'm questioning my own ranking on those teams after watching, especially Houston, over the course of the last couple of weeks, and the fact that they have a passing offense. Like, having a passing offense is such a difference maker in the NFL. And that's kind of where I'm getting at with this Houston-Atlanta number, is like, Atlanta's not going to have a passing offense. They're just not.
So one of the conversations I wanted to have at one point, whether it was this week or next, give it another week, is just the state of quarterbacks in the league and how bad it is in terms of throwing the football. And Stroud looks like he has upside, where so many of these other quarterbacks that we're talking about, Tannehill's not going to throw the ball down the field without A.J. Brown anymore. It's just not going to happen, or it's not going to be successful. Deshaun Watson, not good. Burrow's had a terrible year. Ritter's awful. Pickett's awful. Pickett throws for a couple big plays, but then, I mean, he just missed having a brutal pick six last week, and I know he's hurt now too. But point being is, there are so many quarterbacks that don't look like they have any upside, and Stroud does.
You don't have like as many of the veteran journeymen anymore. Like the guys who are not going to win, but they can like be
manage
the calming Yeah, like you don't have like the Ryan Fitzpatricks. There's not too many of those. The closest are guys like Derek Carr, I would say nowadays, right? Where he even looked horrendous today. But yeah, I mean, it's definitely an issue, and I think it's also like it's brought to the forefront more because of what the league has become, right? 20 years ago, you could get away with shitty quarterback play because you could run the ball, you could pound the rock, play good defense. You can't really do that anymore. Like, that's not a recipe for success.
Yeah, it's not the design anymore. So, unless you have the skill players around you like Brock Purdy has, or Tua with the speed he has around him, you can't get away with now just having your Derrick Henry and jamming the ball down the front seven's throat.
Yep. Agreed. We got 200 of you in the stream right now, and we have 36 likes on the YouTube.
Kyle Orton.
Smash that like down below.
Fan.
No problem. Get us up to as many likes as we possibly can. People find the content in real time. It helps us grow, and then we can do this every week for as long as we can, basically. But please do smash that like button down below. All right, moving on. The Lions are going to have a rest advantage at home against your Carolina Panthers, Clive. We'll talk about this one at length. Carolina, in terms of the injury report, it actually ended up not being too bad today relative to what was expected. Obviously, they're missing J.C. Horn, Xavier Woods. Dante Jackson left the game today, late in the game with a shoulder injury. That's something to keep an eye on because, again, they'll be without 3 of 4 starters in the secondary, basically, if Dante Jackson misses time next week. Lions get a little bit of extra time to recover from injury. I'm not even going to pronounce it. Vitae on the offensive line Missed week 4 with a knee injury. The right tackle, Matt Nelson, as well. So potentially they could get some bodies back. Looking at the Pinnacle number here, we're in like that in-between range, kind of like at a 9.5. You can get a plus 10 minus 116 on Carolina right now. The total of the game is 43.5. The same conversation that we just had about the Texans, in my opinion, about them being good or like better than we think. I think the exact same conversation can be had about Carolina, but on the opposite end of the spectrum. Like they might actually be terrible.
Yeah, so like if you make me choose my bottom two right now, Chicago and Carolina. Like, and it's by margin, I think. I think Arizona, Houston, Indy, they're that next tier up. I think it's really that significant. Bryce Young's holding the ball too long. He's just not ready. And it's his first year starting. Like, I get it. But right now, there's no reason. I don't see any signs of any improvement yet.
The really weird thing for me from a box score perspective today. So I noticed this. I didn't watch a lot of this game, but I saw a lot of it on Red Zone, and it felt to me like Carolina had the ball a lot over the course of the day. So I looked it up, and they did. They had the ball for almost 39 minutes of the game, 38 and a half minutes of the game. They had the ball for 38 and a half minutes, and they generated 232 yards of offense against arguably one of the best defenses, one of the worst defenses in the entire league. Like this, if you didn't see it from Bryce Young early on in the season, the Atlanta game, whatever, you can give them a break, right? New Orleans, week 2, Monday Night Football. Okay, that's a good defense. You can give them a break. But you just played Minnesota, who's horrendous defensively. And I get that he doesn't have the weapons, but that's not going to change. Like, that's not going to change this year. You're throwing to who you're throwing to. You're throwing to Adam Thielen. You're throwing to DJ Chark. Jonathan Mingo was out today. You're throwing to Terrace Marshall. Your tight end is Hayden Hurst. Like, this is what you got to deal with. And there's going to be, we get like these, this is what I would call like a numbers game, in the sense that I think a lot of the numbers guys are going to find value on Carolina next week. Produce a number on a game, a raw number, and you'll be like, there's no way I can get to Detroit 10. There's no way. This is a massive gap. It's similar. It reminds me of Kansas City and the Jets tonight, where like Jets are taking one-way action at post, right? But I have not seen anything like remotely close from Carolina to tell me that they can be competitive next week against the Detroit Lions.
I'm trying to get an idea of success rate for today because, pick six, the 100-yard pick six or whatever the hell it was. That was ugly as hell, or 99-yard.
Yes. And they got a break from Cousins in the game too. They had the exact same thing. Like their defense even generated a touchdown. They still gave it back. It's a mess. Like that's their path to success against Detroit, right? Like it feels like the defense has to hold Detroit to like 20 points somehow in the game for them to have a chance.
Yeah, and I guess that's what I'm trying to get at. It's like the score looks closer than it was, and if I had a bet on Minnesota, I think I would have worried about it for a little while, but probably shouldn't have. But I just really, Cousins doing some dumb shit, but other than that, like, how bad was it?
Yeah, the Carolina defense played well. That I'll give them credit for. At least they limited the Vikings in terms of explosive plays. Series conversion rate for the Vikings was low, 66.7%. From that perspective, on that side of the ball, Carolina is fine. But
it was a little less than I thought. That's what I was checking.
Yeah. But so like here's the debate I would get into right now. I actually think Carolina is going to draw money next week. If you're like a closing line value guy, you want to get quote unquote a good number on the game. I think Carolina number will come down. Do I want to go anywhere near the Panthers in this game? No. In fact, I would love if Carolina came down. and I could bet the Lions later in the week.
I don't, obviously we don't know where the number's going to end yet, but it might be a reasonable thing to think about Lions alternate spread numbers, like, because I think this Vikings game could have been uglier than it was, and I think the Lions can do even more damage. And I think the Lions defense is better than the Vikings, to be honest. So there's that part of it too. Um, this has huge blowout potential in it.
Yeah, I think so. Like I said, I don't know that anyone can get to this number, honestly. Like just market implied ratings. If they played today, I think the number would be 7.5. If I take numbers over the course of the year, week by week basis, including the Dalton week, probably not going to get to this number. So this is kind of like my instinct that someone's going to bet Carolina. I just don't want to be the one to do it. And then on the total side of things, it's like one of those like over teams against under team type of situation. I'm inclined to say it gets bet up to 44. Do I necessarily agree with that? No. I mean, the 3 games Bryce Young started, the final scores in those games have totaled 34 points, 37 points, 34 points. I just don't think he's capable enough overall for me to want to take an over there.
No, this feels like this number goes down towards 43 as opposed to going up. I don't see much of a path for Carolina putting points on the board.
Johan says, is Minnesota 6 yards per play, about 1 for 8 on third down? Weird. Yes. It's a weird box score if you look at it.
It is.
I have to watch the game in full tomorrow, but it's definitely a weird box score for sure. I also laughed at this. I'm not sweating 10 teasers with the Chiefs, but yes, I do have. I'm not even a teaser player, but I'm like, I gotta do this tonight. I don't know how we can. On that Pacheco run into the end zone, by the way, of course, the first thing I noticed was that immediately they showed Taylor Swift celebrating. It wasn't anyone on the Chiefs. They cut away from that Pacheco celebration within like 2 seconds to go to Taylor Swift hugging everyone in the box. It's become a little bit annoying. I'll be honest. I'm a bit of a hater, but it's become a little bit annoying to me.
I didn't even know there was a team in Kansas City before Taylor Swift showed up. I had no idea.
Oh man.
No,
I don't need the Swifties to come after me. This is all. I'm not disrespecting the music or anything like that. It's just a little bit of a sideshow now, and it's too much. Like it's a little too much.
It's the Dion of the NFL. Like that's really what it boils down to. But I mean, Lions, good teaser leg for next week. If you get him before the line moves, if it does decide to go the other way.
Yeah. Tough game. Okay. Let's go to the next game on the board here. It's the Tennessee Titans, Indianapolis Colts, AFC South matchup. Indy had some pretty bad injuries this week. Their center, Ryan Kelly, was out with a concussion, as was their left tackle, Bernard Raymond. He got concussed in practice on Friday. I don't really know how that happens, but he did. They were missing their center and left tackle today. Almost mounted a big comeback against. They did. I mean, they almost completed the big comeback against the Rams. Tennessee, Treylon Burks was out today with a knee injury. Peter Skoronski out, still recovering from his appendicitis or having his appendix out. Early number here, Indy -1 at home, and the total is 41.5. Titans look good today. How much of that is the Titans looking good versus the Bengals being a complete shit show?
Yeah. True. That's I mean, if you asked me though, like, I'm wrong on the Titans. So let's start there because okay. I kind of have them as like this ugly team. I'm really down on Tannehill, and not that he did a ton today. I mean, it was a lot of a Derrick Henry show, and Cincy just looking awful, at least from what I saw. I'd have to watch the game, but I don't have enough confidence to say that the number that I had on Tennessee was right. That said, I feel like Tennessee should be a favorite over Indiana neutral. Barely.
Okay, but if you have them favored over Indiana neutral, you're basically at this line then, regardless.
Yeah, so that's what I mean. And if I'm wrong about them, should it be a little bit more? Should this line be going more towards Tennessee?
I think that like my initial gut is that it's going to just be hard to find a valuable number on this game unless there's like some news one way or another. Like if the Colts O-line is back, they get left tackle center back, I'm very interested in betting the Colts because
Okay.
that's something that wasn't priced in this week. And
Mhm.
I really like Anthony Richardson. I think he's solid. I love the coaching staff. Shane Steichen over there. So like that's something that I'm interested in. Who else is there at Taylor Swift now? Ryan Reynolds looks like. Blake Lively.
Yeah,
Big
Blake.
party tonight.
Yeah,
Big party. Blake Lively was looking pretty good there. I'm not gonna lie. It was hard not to notice.
I think
Hard
she's shooting
not
a
to.
movie in New York, and she's been in Hoboken, like in the area where I live, shooting something there too recently. So she's been in the neighborhood.
Yes. Tennessee, they tend to be very predictable for me. In the sense that if you get pressure on Tannehill, if it's a good defense, then the Titans are not going to move the ball. Like if you go look at the Titans schedule for the last 3 years and find whenever they've went up against a good defense, they struggle. When they don't go up against a good defense, they move the ball. Maybe I'm more inclined to like the over in this game than a side, but it's going to be at Lucas Oil, good conditions, low total. Both of these defenses can be beat through the air. The Colts secondary is terrible. I know Kenny Moore made a big interception later in the latter half of the game today. Titans defense is everyone's calling it the pass funnel defense now. I kind of hate just like repeating that. It sounds, I don't know, it just sounds weird. But I don't know. I can see overtaking money in this game.
I feel like Anthony Richardson, anytime touchdown feels like an auto bet these days.
Mm.
Um, but I could.
I didn't love the price today. I'll be honest with you.
What was it? I didn't bet it. I'm just.
I brought
joking.
it. Somebody mentioned it on Pizza Buffet this morning, and I brought it up really quickly. And I looked at it, and I'm like, nah, I don't. And he scored a touchdown. Don't get me wrong; it was a winning bet, but it didn't feel like it's still a valuable
right.
bet. Yeah,
Yeah.
it feels like we're chasing it now.
Got it. Just looking through some of the success rate numbers from Tennessee. I mean, I know Henry had a good day. Tannehill had a good day. 82% series success rate. All right, wow. All right, they had a pretty damn good day.
Yeah, it was a shit kicking. Like they destroyed the Bengals today. They went 8 of 13 on third down. Did the Titans? That was huge. +3 turnover margin as well. They just played a great game. But we'll get to this for sure when we talk about the Bengals. But I kind of just feel like the Bengals are broken. I'm not even sure what we can take away from that.
No, they broken sounds right. Wow, maybe Indy is a little bit better than I'm giving them credit for too. I don't see this number going down from a total perspective. I mean, I could see it going up a little bit, not a ton, but wow.
One of the market making offshores just got hit to the over in this game as well. So it looks like Pinnacle's the last like 41.5 on the board with decent limits. Just one reason that you might want to bet at Pinnacle if you're in Ontario.
So Indy, LA closed at 44 and a half, 44, 44 and a half, and the Titans 41 and a half. Yeah, I don't think this goes down. I think this goes up.
Okay. Agreement there. I'll be monitoring the injury report for this one pretty closely. Next game, we're going to skip the Giants and the Dolphins. Giants still have to play Monday Night Football. That's most definitely going to have an impact on the number for next week, as is a potential return of their left tackle, Andrew Thomas. And we're going to move on to the New Orleans Saints and the New England Patriots. This one's being played at Foxborough. Lots of injury stuff to point out. In specific with the New England Patriots today, Jonathan Jones did not play again in the secondary. They're very depleted in terms of cornerbacks. Christian Gonzalez got hurt, left the game today. He's been their stud rookie, probably the number one in terms of odds for defensive rookie of the year. Matthew Judon, very importantly as well, looks like he suffered a potentially significant elbow injury. So basically an already depleted defense loses two key contributors on defense. New Orleans didn't get away scot-free from their game as well, but their injuries were much less significant. Andres Pete, who's a backup guard, who was filling in for Cesar Ruiz, who's injured. He left the game with a concussion today. Jawan Johnson left with a calf injury. But I feel very confidently just based off of the way that the early week injury report is shaping up, that the Saints are going to be a popular early play with the injuries on the Patriots defense.
What's the total looking like at?
Total's 38.5. Extremely low.
All right. Well, there's less of an opportunity than I was hoping for. I thought that number would open a little higher.
The Saints were maybe the most frustrating team for me today. Part of what frustrated me was I actually made my bet with the hopes that Jameis Winston would play. And I don't think that Jameis Winston is better than Derek Carr. But my God, Derek Carr, throw the ball downfield. Like, just for once. I don't know what his ADOT was today. I don't even want to look at it because it's going to make me sick. But their offense was just stuck in the mud all day. Like, just a brutal offensive performance. And I'm not necessarily saying that I like the Saints to go in to Foxborough and win next week. I kind of want to bet against both of these teams. But just the injury situation, I feel like it's going to make the Saints a very valuable, early, attractive piece this week.
Yeah, they had a very low series success rate. Derek Carr did not look good from the plays that I saw, but I also didn't see a ton of this game. But New England is just on offense. They are god awful. So 38.5 is not a surprising number. I was hoping it would be higher, but it's not. I don't know. New England, New Orleans kind of, are they about break even?
Ask me.
It feels like it
on the week. Yeah.
Yeah.
There's also a question of whether or not Mac Jones plays, which I think he will. So Bailey Zappi came in relief of Mac Jones today.
Yeah,
I don't think that Belichick is benching Mac Jones anytime soon. He seems to have a fondness for Mac Jones.
And let's be honest, Zappi's not better. He's not. Like, I know he had a couple of good games last year, but I don't think he's better. I think, Mac Jones has a little bit of upside relative. You either ride with him or you don't. Like, you're not moving your franchise any forward at all by bringing in Bailey and letting him play.
Christian says Bill said that he's starting next week. This is actually very funny. I remember Belichick double teaming Carr's checkdowns one time. Doesn't surprise me. So Derek Carr today threw for 127 yards on 37 pass attempts. 127 yards on 37 pass attempts. He threw for 3.4 yards per pass. Like,
his average depth of target was 7.6.
Yeah.
Baker's 5.4.
So the average, there was one downfield bomb to Chris Olave that was slightly underthrown, and it got broken up. Aside from that, might be skewing things a lot. I'd like to see like the mode. You know what I'm saying?
Yeah.
I'd like to plot every depth of target and just see, because there was probably the most frequent must have been like 3 yards to Kamara. Must have been. So Schefter says that Judon lower bicep tendon tear. Yeah.
And the Chiefs are up 17-0 in the first.
Are we thinking shoulder wasn't great and he was trying to tough it out? Very possible. Yes. But like, I don't care. Like, he sucked today. And Dennis Allen, like, talk about a coach who's not going to get it figured out offensively if it's not working out mid-game. But that was just horrendous to watch. And their OC there, Pete Carmichael Jr., not a big fan. Okay, so yeah, I think New Orleans is going to catch money. Like, I think I'm going to wake up tomorrow morning and it's going to be maybe New Orleans favored. The injuries are just really mounting for the Patriots on defense. really mounting. And
Yeah.
it's having an impact.
Yeah, I see this probably could flip to Saints -1, -1.5 by the time kickoff on Sunday.
We get asked, are the Saints just low-key ass? Baker getting 0.29 EPA per play doesn't seem great. So this was the worst Saints defensive performance in a while as well, which was weird because Mike Evans got hurt in the game, hamstring injury. And the Saints hadn't given up more than 20 points, I believe, in like 12 straight games dating back to last year before they gave up 26 today. I'm kind of surprised at how well the Bucs offense did today, and I have to look into that a little bit more. But this was very much outside of my expectation for Tampa Bay going on the road facing a good defense and what they would be able to do. So that I found interesting. The total in this game is like, I get that these. Let me just quickly look at New Orleans this year. Yeah, New Orleans has not played a game where there's been more than 37 points this year in the 4 games. That's what the challenge is. But with that said, I don't know, those injuries, then it might be a little bit too low for those injuries on defense.
I don't know. These are two bottom teams on offense. I think New Orleans profiles is better than they, or at least in the market, they're profiled better than they are. But damn, they don't do a good job moving the football at all. And New England is pretty terrible too. I don't know. Are there? No, I don't know if there are weather considerations on Sunday in New England, like that far out. I couldn't
Yeah.
imagine.
We wouldn't know until later in the week. All right, we'll keep it moving. AFC North, Pittsburgh Steelers hosting the Baltimore Ravens. Kind of a weird, like, situational spot for the Ravens. It's back-to-back divisional road games. They went on the road at Cleveland today. They stomped them. Then they go out on the road at Pittsburgh next week, and then after that, they go to London. Which is kind of like unusual that it's been scheduled this way. So not the greatest spot for them. Million injuries for Baltimore. At some point, they're going to start getting guys back. Ronnie Stanley, possibly this upcoming week. Marcus Williams on defense, possibly. Pittsburgh, though, suffered some big ones today, specifically Kenny Pickett, who's looked like a bad knee injury. He left the game today, didn't return. They were already missing their right guard, James Daniels. They lost their left tackle today, Dan Moore, who hasn't been very good, but regardless, it's a left tackle. Pat Freiermuth left with a hamstring injury. So Pittsburgh not only got smoked by Houston today, they suffered some injuries in the process. Their offensive coordinator is a complete goof. And we have the Baltimore Ravens -4, even money, on the road at Pittsburgh next week with a total of 40. We don't even know who the quarterback for Pittsburgh is yet, but I guess the market does not see much of a difference between Pickett and Mitch Trubisky right now.
No, I think that's fair too. That's okay. I mean, DTR for Cleveland, his EPA per play was -26.2 today. So this wasn't like a Lamar Jackson show out type of performance, throwing the ball. Is this a little of an overreaction? Nah.
Baltimore, in my opinion, has been very good. So I talked off the top about how I do like my adjusted offensive EPA and success rate numbers, and same on defense. And Baltimore, basically, from my perspective, has been a top 3 offense this year and a bottom 7 defense. Top 7 defense. Pretty consistent across the board. Now, we're going to get into, like, this is Steelers territory, right? Steelers, home dogs, divisional game, like all these AFC North games, you somehow want to take the underdog. Yeah, like that's all going to come into play here. And honestly, it does feel like a little bit reactionary, like overreactionary. This is no disrespect to Baltimore. I think Baltimore is great, but you get a backup quarterback making his first career start. Pittsburgh looks just about as poor as they can. This is a pretty significant adjustment, I would say, in a week. And with the Baltimore injury report, I can see someone coming in and playing Pittsburgh in this game.
I initially, as much as I think Pittsburgh stunk it up today, and the Ravens, beat Cleveland by what, 25. It just, I have to look a little bit more. It just feels like too much. What would you have had? I think I would have had it probably 2 or 2.5. Baltimore coming into today.
Yeah,
Like,
roughly the same thing for me. Now, granted, I was a little bit higher on Pittsburgh because I played Pittsburgh. I also bet Baltimore this week, so I guess maybe a little bit higher on both teams. But yeah, I same exercise as Chicago, Washington earlier. If I take the market's best rating on Baltimore and on Pittsburgh through the first 4 games of the year, I would get Baltimore -1 for this game. If I took both of their worst ratings, I'd get Baltimore -2. We're at 4. That's through a pretty key number.
yeah,
It's like, I see this from Cottage. I hate coaching narratives, but Tomlin might have them ready. I don't know how the Steelers get these games, but there is general market appeal to backing the Steelers in these types of games, and they consistently do tend to take money in these types of games.
So Daniel asks in the chat, would you like Ravens if you were able to get them at -3? I wouldn't be like in a huge hurry. Like, it's not a snap bet for me. Like, I really do have to look and take some time. But 4 or 3.5 is just feels like too much off the cuff.
Yeah. Yeah, I'm with you there. That would be a really challenging one for me to bet now, and obviously that's going to be the case, especially coming off games like today. But I think Pittsburgh will not close unless you get some very, very positive injury news for the Ravens. I don't think Pittsburgh's going to close in this range.
Yeah, I don't either. I think it goes towards Pittsburgh. And what was the total? 40.5?
40 on the nose.
That feels right.
I agree. Feels right. It's a good point, though. Matt Canada still exists. I saw Tomlin's post game today, and he's just like, we got to change a lot of things. Like, we just need to change. And I agree. Honestly, people can rip Pickett all they want. There's no quarterback succeeding in this system. Not only that, Najee Harris actually looked decent at times today. He ripped some big gains, which was unusual. But with Deontay Johnson being out, like Allen Robinson is their second receiver. He sucks. Everything about that offense sucks right now. Tough. I could see this is going to be one of those heavy public lopsided action games. Not that I'm saying it matters, but that's likely what it's going to be, I think.
Yeah.
That's likely what it's going to be. Okay. Cincinnati Bengals, who are broken, at least I believe they are, go out onto the road to take on the Arizona Cardinals. Cincy today loses T. Higgins, left the game with I believe they said a broken rib, and he's going to be out. One of their starting corners, Cameron Taylor-Britt, left with a concussion. They're not a team that's stacked in the secondary, especially at corner. Those are significant injuries. What do we do with Cincinnati, man? Like, what do we do with them now? Because Joe Burrow got in 3 full practices this week. All the talks around camp were from the beat reporters where Burrow's fine, looks good. Calf is becoming less of an issue. And they just absolutely sucked again today. Offensively, it was abysmal. Jamar Chase comes out after the game. He says, I'm open. I'm fucking open. Pardon my language. He's very frustrated. This line for the Bengals is based off of priors. It's not based off of anything we've seen this season. So what do we do? Because these are 2 teams that I think have a very, 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 very high range on what they can be next week.
Yeah, this is I kind of feel like the Cardinals, this probably gets bet down to 3.5. I think people will probably have a hard time going past that, but this is not I mean, Cincy's a league average team right now, like, and they've
Yep.
been priced like a top, I don't know, top 7, top 8 team now all season, and they haven't even shown that they're average, to be honest, right? Like, should they be priced any better than New Orleans, New England, or any team like that that we've seen so far this year? Not a single sign of life, not one.
Yeah, that's kind of where I'm at right now as well. Like, and of course they're capable of just like flipping a switch like that, but they're already performing terribly. That Monday night football game against the Rams, I don't really know what the Rams defense was doing in that game, but they were basically saying, "Okay, Joe, just like take these underneath routes." All and like he was, but today the Titans weren't doing that. They were sending pressure. He couldn't do anything with that pressure. And Arizona, like Arizona's feels like a very competent football team. Like you look at the final score today against San Fran, they lose 35-16. It felt way closer than that for the vast majority of the game. It was 21-16 at one point in that game. Arizona's now coming off. They beat Dallas last week. They played the 49ers tight for 3 quarters. I don't like my initial instinct on this game is like this is too many points right now. Like give me Arizona. That's my first gut instinct is like the Bengals cannot be spotting points where they have to win by margin.
No, it's weird with the Cardinals offense. It's like they get a little streaky in games. Like they get very the first few drives almost nothing today. And then as the game moved on, like I could have easily seen this game being 28 nothing at the half. And then the second half comes along and Arizona starts making a few plays here and there. They start breaking off little chunks of yardage, sustaining drives. They're not careless with the football, and they do show signs and sparks of movement. There's no reason for me to believe I don't think that Arizona, from an offensive standpoint, can be any would be any less competent really than who Cincinnati played this year? The Rams. They just got
The
beat by the
Browns in week
Titans,
1.
Browns.
Yeah.
Like,
And the Ravens, right? In week 2, the Ravens went to Cincinnati and beat them.
yeah, and I mean, Titans ran the ball right down Cincy's throat today. Now, the Cardinals didn't really get much pressure on Brock Purdy or anything today. They weren't very disruptive. Is that enough to say that, Joe Burrow finally has his bounce back game? He'd have to do that without T. Higgins.
Mhm.
And I just haven't seen it yet. So I have no interest in the Bengals. And I do have a little bit of interest in the Cardinals at this number.
Yeah. The chat seems very, very much like they're echoing what we're saying right now. So Mark says Purdy had 1 incompletion and Arizona still should have covered pretty safely. For those who didn't watch the end of that game, there was back-to-back drops
Yeah.
in the end zone for Arizona to cover. Now, it's a different story when you have to cover 2 touchdowns than it is 4.5. We've come a long way on Arizona, but I think they've earned it, honestly. I do. It's not like they're just like fluking out wins or like they've played San Fran tight for 3 quarters. They beat Dallas. They end up blowing a big lead to the Giants, but they were in that game. Washington, close game. Like they have showed the ability to hang around in these games, and I'm not convinced Cincinnati is anything right now. Like again, right? Here's the scenario, and this is always the tricky part, especially when you start getting into weeks 5, 6 of the season. If you knew nothing about the Bengals, nothing, you never watched them go on that Super Bowl run a couple years ago, AFC Championship game last year. If you knew nothing about the Bengals and you only watched their games this year, you might make an argument that Arizona is better than Cincinnati. Like a person that's just watched the 4 games for both teams might think to themselves, Arizona is better than Cincinnati. So are we giving Cincy too much credit because of their priors? And my gut instinct is yes. Like and yes, there's already been an adjustment. Like again, if these teams played this week, before this week's games, spread wouldn't be 4.5. It'd be much higher than that. But Burrow is banged up. Like, and nobody's been able to convince themselves of that just yet. But like it is that, like, that's the case. Something is wrong. He needs to sit for like a month. And I don't know. Arizona just really stands out to me as like, this can't be the number with a banged up Burrow. It can't be.
Yeah, so Daniel in the chat's like, Giants were this number against the Cardinals week 2. Do we think the Giants and the Bengals are the same level right now? Yes. Like, as I look, like, the Bengals are probably like a minus 3-ish points relative to a league average to a 0. That's how bad they've looked. They've looked that bad.
Yeah. We are seeing this market move in real time, by the way.
Where is it going?
So it's going to 4. It's going to 4.
Okay. Not surprising.
Yeah. So yeah, we're starting to see. Well, it's all over the place. Honestly, it's all over. It depends on where you bet. Differing opinions already in early market on this game right now. I'll be very interested to see where this one goes. Honestly, very, very, very interested. I've just been avoiding Bengals games since week 2. I've been just avoiding them. And honestly, I had a numbers edge on the Bengals today against Tennessee. I said, I'm not going to play that because I have no idea. And now I'm just like,
well, that's where I was at today. I got a good price at minus 2.5, and I'm like, okay. And no.
Mm-hmm. Yep. Such is life. Okay. Eagles and Rams is off the board right now because of Matt Stafford. So Matt Stafford says after the game today, he's dealing with a hip injury, expects to play next week. But that's going to be kind of a shit show this week. I imagine that Eagles just take early money in that game just based off of pure speculation. Either you end up coin flipping or Matt Stafford's injury is like a significant inhibitor of what he can do, and you end up with a very good price there. Jets and Broncos off the board as the Jets are trailing 17-2. Zach Wilson actually made a throw downfield in this game as well. Just like a couple of minutes ago, the receiver came back to the ball and made a very good play on it. It was underthrown by about 10 yards, but that did happen. Chiefs and Vikings off the board as well. That's because the Chiefs are playing right now on Sunday Night Football. I'll be very interested to see where that number opens. I think the look ahead on this game was Chiefs -6 at Minnesota. I think Minnesota is going to be a very popular home underdog bet next week. I do. I think the Vikings are way better than the average person realizes because of like just very, very horrendous turnover luck for the most part this year.
So I agree. It's like last year at this time, I think everybody would have been screaming to bet that like this line was completely unfair based on what the Vikings are. And I think the Vikings are probably a better team this year than they were last year. And all the stats aren't necessarily showing it. I think there's obviously it's more than randomness with some of the turnovers, but there's also, to your point, like the luck factor in some of the turnovers as well. I think 6 seems like a lot, but I also don't see a ton of stops in that game either. So I'll be interested in the total.
Yeah. I'll play a guessing game on the total. I didn't see like a look ahead total, but I would imagine that we're going to see Buffalo, Miami type of total in like the 54 range.
Yeah, it's going to be in the 50s.
Yeah, it has. It certainly has to be. Anything that if it's not, it's auto bet to the over. We're at 99 likes, people. Just get us over the hill. Get us over that 100. Goes a long way. As Zach Wilson, just like this guy is an embarrassment to the quarterback position. I know he escaped a sack. I get it, but he's on the run and there's no one within like 5 yards of that receiver in the end zone. And he somehow throws it into the ground. I will just never get it. 17-5 in the Sunday Night Football game. All right. 2 more games we're going to cover here before we sign off for tonight. Actually, you know what? Well, they want Johan in the chat. Eagles, Rams not listed, but any thoughts on a 5 line? So it looks like there are some 5s on the board elsewhere. the Eagles give off a vibe of a team that isn't that good, but I don't like. I really would have wanted the over in this game with Stafford's health being fine. That's kind of how I want to play Eagles games right now. I know the offense doesn't look great, but they still throw downfield. They go for it on fourth down. They do a lot of things that tend to lead themselves towards overs, lends itself towards overs. I don't have a strong opinion at 5. It kind of feels right. I laid 5 with Philly at Tampa a couple weeks ago, Monday Night Football, but that was more so because that was Tampa going up against a defensive line that can generate pressure, and that's like a Baker Mayfield disaster zone type of game. Rams offense looks fairly decent. That just seems like a fine number, like 5. I think there's upside with the Eagles just because of the Stafford hip situation. And yeah, Cooper Kupp, that's a great point. It's week 5. He could come off IR as well. That would make a big difference.
Yeah. The Eagles just haven't looked like the Eagles, and this is coming from somebody that was high on the Eagles too at the beginning of the year, and I just have not been impressed with them offensively or defensively. And maybe it's more that I think on both sides of the ball they're underperforming what I expected. Like I expected them to probably be a tier more to the upper right, like in terms of EPA per play than they are.
So here's a question I have, and I asked myself this today as I was watching Eagles and Commanders. Are the Eagles actually performing poorly offensively, or are they performing poorly offensively relative to the offense that we're accustomed to from a year ago?
That's it.
You know
Yeah,
what?
agreed. 100%.
Right? Like
Yeah. So it's my
it's still
expectations different.
exactly right. Like it's still a very good offense. It's just not the one that looks in sync on everything. Like it's more so the Jalen Hurts scrambles where he
Yes.
appears to not be right. I don't know what's going on there. Maybe
So
something's going to break. Yeah.
I was having a conversation with Jason before, like we went on the air about that exactly. Like I don't have these numbers ready for me exactly, but I would love to see the NFL rate of scrambles for first downs this year compared to last year because it seems significantly down across the board. Not just a Hurts thing, but Justin Fields finally broke a pretty big scramble that I saw today. I'm not seeing as many of them as I feel like I'm used to. It could just be perception, but I would love to look at some numbers.
I would be interested in that too. Josh Dobbs runs for a lot of first downs, a lot. I saw Justin Herbert running for first downs today. I was like, what is going on here? Josh Allen, a bunch too. Mahomes just threw a horrible interception. You
So I
really
guess
got to wonder if this is all part of the script of the Sunday Night Football here.
and even like Trevor Lawrence, he's somebody that can, move the sticks with his legs. Ritter hasn't as much. And maybe it's not the huge big scrambles that we're not seeing. Maybe that's more it. Maybe we're not seeing the 30-40 yard scrambles as much as I'm used to. I don't know. Something I just want to look into.
This is like so I don't it's not so Scott I believe is an Eagles fan. Eagles linebackers and safeties are new/young and are getting targeted. It feels like teams are just very willing to take shots on the Eagles this year. And last
As
year it
opposed
did
to
not
last
seem
year.
like that. Yeah.
Agreed.
Okay. Sunday Night Football next week. It's the big one. I don't say that as a Cowboys fan. I say that as an NFL fan. Cowboys going to San Fran or Santa Clara, technically, to take on the 49ers. Opening number at Pinnacle is a kind of like a in-betweener of it's basically a 4. We'll call it 4. San Fran -4, total of 45.5. I have thoughts. Initial thoughts.
I'm not as high on Dallas as you are. I don't know about your market numbers either, but 4 seems heavy.
Dallas is going to take money in this game, are they not? Like
Yeah.
they're going. I'm not saying that they're going to go in there and win the game, but I think Dallas is going to take money in the game. Like it's, Okay, so I didn't know this, but Daniel says San Fran on the look ahead was -3. So like, what's causing this jump up this week? Like, Dallas didn't suffer any significant injuries in their game. Michael Parsons was hobbling around, but he stayed in the game. They got 2 offensive linemen back today. Tyler Biotish, their center, Zach Martin, their right guard. They'll have a chance to get Tyron Smith back next week. Like, you're going to have, I don't know. I feel like that it's almost instantaneous. Dallas is going to take money in the next day, just based off of where the number is.
I think it should probably, like, I'm not saying what my numbers would end up, but it feels like the market's probably going to end up like maybe -3.5 even, or maybe -3, -120, somewhere in that range. That feels about right to me. I don't know if Christian McCaffrey. What just happened?
Zach Wilson missed a wide open touchdown to Garrett Wilson. He just overthrew it down the sideline. Yeah,
Awesome.
It's disastrous. Like, whatever. I mean, big number they can cover, but yeah, it's just funny to watch some of these throws sometimes. Wilson just really ran a great route where he baited the corner. Anyways, yeah.
I know McCaffrey pulled the Al Bundy today. The 4 touchdowns in one game, but
Polk High football.
Yeah. 4 seems egregious.
Do people even know? Like, I guess you're roughly the same age as me if you're making Al Bundy references. I wonder if people even know what the hell we're talking about these days. I hope people in the chat actually remember who Al Bundy was. And Married with Children was such a good show, which would definitely 100% be canceled today. Could never, ever air on the airwaves today.
Yeah, listen, it struggled in its own time, but yeah, no shot. Like, the most chauvinistic and just anyway. Yeah, I threw out an Al Bundy gift this week, and I was thinking to myself exactly that. I'm like, shit, do people even know what this is? Like,
oh man, yeah, it was a pretty solid show. Secondary thought I have on this game. Okay, by the way, Dallas just immediately takes money at Pinnacle right now, down to 3.5. So that just happened, instantaneous in real time. Second thing, here's my opinion. I think that the under is going to draw money in this game, and I'm going to like the over. I actually don't put me on blast or anything like that. I'm going to actually say this about Dallas's defense as well. I think both defenses in this game are overrated. I think in our heads, the defenses are better than they are, but both have significant weaknesses. You didn't see Mac Jones take advantage of it today for New England. That didn't happen because it's Mac Jones and it's the Patriots offense. But it's very different with San Fran. San Fran has scored 30 points or more in every single Brock Purdy regular season start. Hasn't happened yet. Under just took money, says Curtis. This is kind of my feel on the game. Like, just from a market implied number of where we were, I feel like the under is going to get bet, but I feel like the over is a solid play.
So in terms of like game planning and scheming, I think San Francisco can do some things against the Cowboys to move the ball and, quick routes, get the ball in McCaffrey and Debo and Ayuk's hands and just go. And then, not to mention routes that Kittle can run. I haven't seen enough of Dallas offensively this year to know how they're going to exploit San Francisco. However, what I saw with Arizona and what they were doing today, I have no reason not to believe that Dallas can mimic some of that stuff. If that makes sense.
I'm with you. Yep. My adjusted. So, who said this? Ryan. Niners D wasn't good today. I agree. So, based off of adjust for quality of competition for both of these teams, and the defensive numbers actually look very average for both of them. Yeah. Dallas so far has played the Giants, the Jets, the Cardinals, and the Patriots. Not great.
No.
San Fran has played Pittsburgh, the Rams, the Giants, and the Cardinals. Not great. I do think both of these teams can move it. There's been no tests. Okay.
And the
Final
couple of
game.
tests that the 49ers had with this defense last year, and there weren't many, so that was one of my big arguments against San Francisco that people kind of shit on me for towards the end of the year last year was when they did get tested against KC, KC kind of put the wood to them. And, uh, wow, the Jets scored a touchdown.
I know.
Holy shit.
Yep.
Teaser's still alive. You're good. So this will be the test. This will be the game where we finally learn something about both of these teams, I think.
Yep. I'm with you. Been waiting for this one for a while. Monday Night Football, final game we're going to cover here. Green Bay going on the road to Las Vegas. The Packers basically have like an extended bye week because they played on Thursday and they don't have to play until Monday. So it's a lot of rest, and they need it because injuries have been mounting for them. David Bakhtiari is on IR. He might never play again. It's possible season or career ending. Their left guard, Elkton Jenkins, has been out for a couple weeks with a knee injury. John Runyon, their right guard, is dealing with an ankle injury. He left their game against Detroit limping. He was seen limping out of the locker room. Luke Musgrave, their tight end, got a concussion. Devondre Campbell, inside linebacker for them, missed last week's game. Jair Alexander has been out with a back injury. So it's been pretty rough for the Green Bay Packers. Las Vegas would love to get Jimmy Garoppolo back. No offense to Aiden O'Connell. He was fine. He had some moments today, but for the most part, I thought he was pretty raw still. Pretty significant downgrade. This is a Garoppolo number, in my opinion. And I think the likelihood that Green Bay gets players back means that they're most likely to catch money on the road in this game. Also, little bit of an underrated factor here. Maybe I'm just like, maybe it's nothing, but there's going to be so many Packers fans that make this trip to Las Vegas for this game as well. It's going to feel like a Chargers home game, I think, for the Raiders.
What was nuts was the amount of Raider noise in the Chargers game today. Like, that was absolutely insanity.
There was one point in the game where the commentators are like, we thought this was going to be a 50-50 split. It's like 70% Raiders fans in here.
I know. Yeah. Yeah, exactly. Like, it's kind of crazy. I think Green Bay ends up, favored. I think Jordan Love is going to have some success. I don't know if this. I didn't watch enough of the Raiders' offense today, but the Green Bay team total, based on what the total looks like, is something that I think might be interesting to me too.
Yeah, I hear you. This is another one where, like, my opinion of these teams does not match up with the market numbers. Like, if I'm just looking at strict market numbers from this year, I would expect that you'd have like Las Vegas in the -1 range at home, slightly worse than Green Bay. That's kind of been how they've been power rated all year. You give them a little bit of home field. Maybe it's a pick 'em or -1. We're not seeing that. We're seeing it the other way around. But I think that there's so much positive regression in the form of players returning from injury for Green Bay. Like, you could get your star cornerback. You could get a stud left guard back. There's just
extra rest.
Yeah, you extra rest for Aaron Jones and Christian Watson, who were on snap counts last game. Like, there's just a lot that plays into it where you can finally get the Packers back at full health. Now, that doesn't necessarily mean that they're going to be great at full health, because Jordan Love looked really bad under the spotlight against Detroit last week. But I still think that the Raiders are low key terrible.
Mm-hmm. Yeah, they're like bottom 5 team in my mind, and without Garoppolo, I think it gets even uglier. They have significant ugly potential.
Like, Pittsburgh just went into Las Vegas and manhandled the Raiders. Like, that wasn't even a close game. I know what the final was like 23-15 or something, but that was the Steelers' like best offensive output in like a year and a half, basically. The Raiders, I mean, the only thing that stopped the Raiders from looking worse today as well was, I mean, there's a few things, but like the Chargers basically took their foot off the gas late in that game. Just classic Brandon Staley coaching.
Yeah. Like, why have an easy win? What fun is that?
Mm-hmm.
Who's going to watch? Might as well be the WWE the way that these comebacks,
It's honestly crazy. I actually didn't tell people this today, but I did live bet the Colts when they were down 23-0 in that game. I also got a very good live bet on Minnesota when they were trailing as well. But yeah, I'm with you, man. Like, these comebacks just happen like crazy. Teams do not know how to ice these games. Adams did get hurt today. He also did return to the game. So he landed on his shoulder, catching a pass over the middle of the field, but he did return to the game. Although he was like more of a decoy when he came back. He didn't have like a massive impact. I think that's going to do it for us this week, Clive, unless there's anything else you feel super passionate about.
No, Bears suck. That's it.
Yeah.
Caleb.
Who are the bye week team? Who are the teams on the bye next week? So it's definitely Tampa Bay is one. The Chargers are another, which is huge for the Chargers because somehow they're already suffering from catastrophic injuries. The
Denver
Browns
plays, Cleveland's off,
and the Seahawks. So Seahawks play Monday Night Football and they're off. Okay, so it's like Cleveland. That's huge because Deshaun Watson can get back to full strength. Chargers is huge. I really want to fade Tampa at some point in the near future. But
there will be an over adjustment.
There will be a time. Who do they get week 6? Detroit. That might be the one. Appreciate everyone who's been in the chat. Appreciate the support of the show. Hopefully we get some good numbers here for this upcoming week. Austin filled in for you last week, Clive, and I think we did a pretty damn good job. I think so far this year, honestly, hate to do the Barry Horowitz, but I'll do it anyways. With the exception of that Detroit home game against Atlanta, where Detroit had like a million injuries, the line went from 4 to 3. They still covered, by the way, in that game. I think we've done a pretty good job of crushing closing line value on everything that we've been strong on. So appreciate everyone who tunes in. And again, don't let people mock you for betting openers or anything like that. We've got some pretty strong limits here at Pinnacle tonight. You can get down money. You don't have to wait until later in the week. 3,000 on sides, 2,000 on totals, 2,000 on money line. If you're in Ontario, sign up using code HAMMER. Must be 19 plus. Of course, please play responsibly. For myself, Rob Pizzola, I don't know if you guys have heard, but the Cowboys are back. For Clive Bixby, I don't know if you guys heard, but the Panthers suck. And for producer Jason Cooper, who seems to be a Jalen Hurts hater for some reason or another. Did I get that right, Jason? I don't know if you want to jump on the mic. Seems like he's been taking some shots. No, he's not. He says in the chat he's not. For myself, for Clive, for producer Jason Cooper, this has been Forward Progress here on the Hammer Betting Network, presented by Pinnacle. We're back tomorrow, 2:00 Eastern time. It's G-Stack George, it's Suma, it's Clev TA. They're going to break down all of today's action, their takeaways from this week. Look ahead to what's coming up next week as well. You'll want to catch that, so make sure you're subbed here on Forward Progress, and we will catch you next Sunday, myself and Clive. Peace out.